Hi, I'm Steven.
And I'm Jake.
Welcome to Tales from the SaaS Graveyard, where we talk to employees at tech companies that are in the middle of the bell curve, not going out of business, but definitely not hitting the big time. The SaaS Graveyard is a purgatory populated by companies that have made it to annual revenues in the 30 to 50 million range, but can't get to the next level, which is pretty impressive outside Silicon Valley, but frowned upon here.
We interview folks in various roles about their experience working at companies like this. We're looking to see what common themes emerge across industries and roles.
Today, we will talk with our friend Nate, who spent time at a company we will call Goose.io. Goose.io was focused on the background check for employers and people searching business to help people find their long lost high school sweetheart. Nate's role changed over his 5 years as he explored different opportunities within the company. He went from HR operations to videographer to marketer. What a mixed bag of skills.
That is a strange mix, but I've always felt that anyone can do a job as long as they meet two basic criteria. First, they have to be a competent person, and second, they have to have a desire to do the job. If you have those two traits, then I think there's no job you can't learn over time and get good at.
I agree with that completely, Jake. One time I was in a role kind of doing jack of all trades, marketing, product, customer support. And at one point we needed to do some video work. And I was really excited about because I got to learn something new, do something I thought was very creative. But after I did the first few, it became a chore. And I was definitely less excited about my role just because I knew this was a big part of something I was doing every single day. I think a big desire for success in a role is, that desire for learning something new day in and day out.
Yeah, so perhaps the key is finding a job that you continually find new things in. So, that video editing example, there are professional video editors and they probably approach every day like it's a completely new challenge. And so, and to you, it's just like, oh, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. So that's probably the key is if you can find that job that maybe someone else thinks, oh, it's the same thing, but you always find something new to keep you engaged. That's going to be the job that you love.
And when you're first out of college, that's really what your first few roles are, a process of trying things out and seeing what keeps your interest. Now, let's talk to Nate and see what his path through different roles led to. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steven. Thanks, Jake. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I guess just to kick us off, can you let us know what you were doing before you joined Goose.io?
I was in college. Goose.io was the first job that I had outside of school. I went to studying business and knew I wanted to work in startups. I basically just read Hacker News a lot, and I think I really romanticized the startup lifestyle and the ethos, and made it my goal to make it out to Silicon Valley. And Goose.io was my ship to get there.
And how did you find out about Goose.io?
They recruited at my college, and I was pretty lazy doing my job search back then. I want to say lazy, but I hadn't applied to many companies. However, I had actually gone and talked to my college counselor and said that I wanted to work at a startup in Silicon Valley, which in 2012, believe it or not, was not nearly as popular of an idea as it is now. And when they came to recruit, my counselor put me in touch, and then I talked to them and really enjoyed the conversations. Like everyone I talked to, I really gelled with. And then, yeah, they hired me.
When you joined, how big was the company? What was the kind of high level size of sense of revenue, anything like that going on?
So when I joined, um, there was about 180 people working at headquarters, and probably, I don't know if this for sure, but probably around 100 people working in customer service. We did that in house. But this comes with an important caveat that uh, the company had just sold one of its products, and about half the people in headquarters were about to leave to that company that they got sold to and work at that other company. So that we were back down to like 80, maybe 100 people in headquarters pretty quickly after I joined.
Gotcha. Wow, so
And
that's a big departure.
yes, big departure. It was culturally pretty impactful to the company. I wasn't there for the before. I was really there for the after. So it's hard for me to comment too much on what changed, but it definitely made a big difference. You can imagine that whenever there's a big exit at a company, there's all sorts of questions about who gets to go, who gets to stay, how the spoils and riches are distributed, etc. And I think there was a lot of that going on. But as a new hire, fresh out of college, I was pretty safe from hearing or getting involved in any of that.
And what was your role there?
So I started out in operations, like an HR team, very small team, and recruiting was a big part of my job. I actually started doing the college recruiting that recruited me later that year in February, but also things like company events. We had a happiness engineer, um, so like the company was a really great place to work in terms of perks and benefits. So we had a lot of events. We even had company trips, and I would just kind of assist in running and planning those. Um, and then like various things that we needed to do to keep the office running. Like the office manager was also on my team, so I would help her out with various things. Um, Everything from like taking people's photos from the first day that they joined the company to like filling out headcount and HR legal spreadsheets, to recruiting, et cetera, that sort of thing.
Wait, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say there was a happiness engineer?
Yes, a happiness engineer, which I think in 2012 was, I think Zappos was the first company to have a happiness engineer, but it was a little bit of a trend back then. Have you heard this term?
I have never heard this term. Jake, have you heard
Mm,
this term? Never.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to be a happiness engineer. Yeah, it sounds great.
It is a great job. Your job is to manage the perks and benefits for the company, but usually you only have happiness engineer if you have some pretty awesome perks and benefits. Um, we had lots of food. We had a yoga room, yoga classes. We even had free sailing, which was pretty unique.
Free
Uh,
sailing.
Free sailing. Yeah, the company would pay for you to get your skipper's license, I think. And then once you had your skipper's license, they would pay for any like sailing rentals that you wanted to do with other people at the company. So you would always be taking coworkers out into the San Francisco Bay whenever the company paid. But it was like this really nice perk, and a lot of people sailed on the weekends. And it kind of happened organically because it was already happening early on in the company. A lot of the people who first started it enjoyed sailing, so that was kind of cool.
I How much does sailing cost usually? Like, is this like $100 a pop every time you want to go on the bay?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I probably went on 3 sailing trips in 5 years, so it's not. Uh, I don't know how frequent they were, but yeah, it's got to be like a couple hundred to $1,000 every time they did
I've
one
been
of
in the
those
working world
trips.
for 20 years and I've gone on 0 sailing trips, so I'm jealous.
I think it was pretty genius. I thought it was a great move by them.
No, I mean, it's one of those things you're going to talk about it, but whether you're going to execute on it's another thing. Was there anything, what was like the final factors of actually deciding that you wanted to work at Goose.io?
So the for me, a lot of it was that I really connected with the people that I talked to during my interview. Um, as a new grad, what I wanted out of a career was really vague, mostly based on like secondhand information. But when I looked at their website and the way they described the way the company worked and its internal culture, it matched exactly what I was looking for. They also did a really good job branding their college recruiting program. If there's like, if I had to pick like the top 5 things that this company did right, their college recruiting program would definitely be in those top 5. Because even though the business model wasn't exactly a sexy business model, if you were to go and see Goose.io's like stand at a career fair at Harvard, for example, you would see a pretty long line because they did such a good job branding the recruiting program, to like catch people's attention and get them excited about working at a startup in Silicon Valley.
No, that's never something I've considered as kind of like a big thing to focus on as a company.
Yes, when I joined, I think they said 30 to 35% maybe of headquarters was people who joined out of college. So it was like a very young company in terms of age.
And so were they just really selling the fact that, oh, come work at a startup in Silicon Valley, and there were no other companies like that recruiting?
Yes, that's also true. So it's not like I was deciding between this and some other startup in Silicon Valley. It was like deciding between this or working at like a big tech or tech-like company in the Boston area. Um, So this was a pretty clear decision for me.
Now, is there anything that you wish you knew before you started?
It's interesting. A lot of the problems of the company that turned out to become like bigger issues in later years were actually pretty clear to me in the first like week or two when I look back on it. It's actually kind of like a life lesson. Like it didn't take a genius to see them. It took like maybe more honesty to admit them to yourself. Uh, but I don't know what certainly like I tried a lot of different careers out at this company. They're really generous with letting me explore and try different departments and different roles. And I certainly wish I knew what I had wanted earlier, maybe. But there wasn't a lot hidden about the company or anything like that when I joined. I think I actually figured out the good sides and the bad sides pretty quickly because it was on the surface.
Yeah. No, I think that resonates a lot with me. So let's actually get to being there. You're all excited to join Goose.io. Your kind of dream job set up after college. What was your first month like there?
Well, the first 2 weeks was training, and I joined with like 11 other people who were fresh out of college, which was great. We all became like best friends immediately, and it was like, I don't know, it was like we're at camp or something. And the training, was training. We sat in a room for 8 hours a day, and different people came in and gave us talks, and we just learned about different aspects of the company. Um, and I'm trying to think maybe what it was like when I actually started. I think I really had a bad idea of what my role was actually going to include day to day. I think it's true of a lot of jobs though. And I think like my first projects were actually to help run and produce the internal speaker series. Like we would bring in speakers a lot to talk to the whole company about like various topics. Like maybe they ran a nonprofit and they would talk about their work in their nonprofit. And we'd have to contact them, bring them in, and I would record them and like run the event. And that was like one of my first projects, I think, was to edit like 9 different speaker series videos and put them up on our YouTube channel. Again, like the operations role was kind of like a miscellaneous role.
What was this speaker series just for the internal for the company, or was it like, hey, anyone come over to Goose.io, come watch the speaker?
It was only internal. Yeah, it was only internal.
That's a pretty cool perk for a company of that size.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, at big companies we had that once in a while, but never had a company that small.
Yeah, this company did a good job with perks and like creating a fantastic place to work. Work-life balance included.
So, Nate, one of the things you mentioned was that first week or two, you started to get a sense of like, oh, maybe this company didn't have, had some issues with their business model. What were the things that made you that came to your attention where it gave you pause about the company's potential for success?
Sure. I think there were two things that were obviously problems or challenges that not only did I notice, but that like I talked about with the other people that had joined at the same time with me as me. The first one was that the people search business, the industry, had some like dark patterns in their product and in their marketing. And this company was a little bit better than the competition, but it still used some of those dark patterns. The most egregious of which was getting people to sign up for a free trial for their product and then like uh, committing them to an actual subscription that they probably weren't aware they were committing themselves to. Certainly, it was on the page, but it was designed in such a way that most people missed the fact that they were signing up for a free trial. Um, and then in terms of marketing, like this is the people search business. You've probably seen ads like this on the internet, but posting ads that are really just kind of misleading, such as find out if your spouse is cheating on you, or find out if, which I don't really know how you would find that from a phone record or an address record, uh, but like things that are really like incite anger or intrigue in the wrong way. The business for the people search industry comes from Google, from search engine marketing. And if your competition is able to produce a more effective ad than you are, you're really screwed. It's really difficult to beat them because at the end of the day, the products that you're selling are not that different. So when the competition resorts to like sketchy or unethical advertising practices that you yourself won't commit to, it makes it harder because those practices are usually pretty effective at getting people to click.
Got it.
Um, so that was one problem. Both that the industry was a little bit sketchy and that ourselves were using some dark patterns that I wasn't too comfortable with. Like this certainly were beyond the line of what I thought was correct and right to do. And then the other issue that I kind of saw immediately was with a whole other project or product that really just had no vision. It was pretty clear that the company had decided to find a problem. Like they had a solution, but they wanted to find a problem, and that they didn't know what they were doing. And I would never have put it in such strong words at the time. Like I was still really enamored with the company. I was really happy to be there. I was really happy during training. All the people were awesome. But looking back, it was very clear that I felt that they just had no vision for the product. And I'll go into more detail about exactly what they thought the vision for the product was.
You move out to San Francisco, you're getting to work at a startup, so you're very excited about that. And then you see these things that are somewhat, concerning during your training. But you were still excited to be there. Did you have any concerns though at this time? Like, oh, did I make the wrong choice?
No, I didn't have concerns in this. I didn't have major concerns. Like I knew that the people I was working with were good people, and I think that like that always stayed true. People who like cared about their founders who cared about their employees who cared about forming like positive relationships with other teammates. Like I could sense that I was at a company that was really special, that felt like a family. And so I think that outweighed the concerns about the business model for the other products.
So then let's get into you've already talked a little bit about sort of your first role there, and sort of kind of a jack of all trades within the operations team. How long were you in that role before you moved into something else?
So I was in that for a year, and right before my 1 year anniversary, um, I made a video about one of our company trips. We took a company trip to Pismo Beach. It was really cool, and I just got a lot of like good sunset shots, basically, of people like hanging out on the beach. And one of the founders came to me and said, "Hey, I think video marketing is a really like big upcoming untapped area of marketing, and I think you've got some skills making videos. You've made a few of our speaker series. You made some of this trip. Would you be interested in doing that full time?" And I kind of took the plunge and switched to that a year in.
What was the decision making process in your mind to do that switch?
Well, I knew that HR and operations was not my calling. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had a history of making videos for fun, like ever since I was a kid. So I knew there was some real passion there that I wanted to follow up on. And I was really happy with the videos that I had made for the company. And honestly, I wasn't treating my career as something to climb, but more something to explore. And this was a surprise to me that anyone would even ask me to do this kind of job. Like I really never thought of becoming a video marketer, but I felt like it was something that I could do, and it did interest me. And so I said yes.
And so then what was your day to day like in that role?
Well, that was interesting. It was really tough because even though I made videos as a kid, of course, I really didn't know what I was doing. And no one else at the company had any experience with video marketing. I could use like Final Cut Pro. I could like shoot with a camera. I could do a pretty good job editing. But other than that, like lighting, a lot of other aspects of filmmaking, I had to teach myself. So I did a lot of that. The videos that I was tasked to make were product videos or testimonial videos, or actually a lot of videos about the company because we were recruiting pretty heavily at the time. And I would say that it was a good experience, but it was a lot of pain of me like having confidence issues trying to figure out how to make these videos on my own without a lot of feedback from somebody who knew what they were doing.
Right. And so, and I guess who even was your manager at that time in that role?
Initially, it was actually one of the founders, but then it moved pretty quickly to be the person in charge of
Hmm.
marketing.
That's fine, but I understand like that person wasn't really equipped to give you good feedback on how to sort of improve in your role. You just had to sort of solve things on your own.
Yeah, it's certainly. I definitely got feedback. Like people certainly had their own opinions about how the video should be, and in general, if it was accomplishing our goals or not. But if I had a question about lighting, nobody at the company was going to be able to help me out with
Right.
that.
Did you feel like you had like did you feel like you accomplished good things in that role?
Yes, but I would say that my like productivity was really sporadic. Like I would accomplish great things, but it wasn't on like a steady drumbeat of progress. There was a lot of failure along the way towards doing that. Things got better once we actually hired more people to work on video production, and we did more animation style videos for the product videos. You see a lot of these like video explainers today, but once we started doing more things like that, less things with real people, then I think our product videos started making a much bigger difference on our products' websites, and that was like more confidence inspiring and made me feel better. But in the beginning, it was definitely a challenge.
So that move to the animation style, like what I don't see how does a videographer fit in with that? Like what were you then doing with that?
Like, how did I learn that? I had to like teach myself a lot of stuff there as well. My real I always joked my real video skill was being able to learn like Final Cut Pro or After Effects. It wasn't really like an aesthetic taste or any kind of like creative vision. It was always technical
Hmm.
ability. Animation is a good choice for a lot of like software-based businesses because the thing that you're selling is often pretty abstract to explain. And so it's kind of hard to have like talking heads or like pictures of real life objects when really you should be showing the software and like abstract diagrams of the service that you provide, which is much easier to do with animation.
Right. I mean, I've watched tons of those videos explaining exactly like how to use the software and that 2 minutes of animation. Um,
Right.
and so in this role, you're more involved with the actual performance of the business. Were you aware of like how well the business was doing?
Yeah, the company was pretty transparent um, with financial information. So revenue goals were shared amongst everybody and reported on quarterly, I believe. Uh, and at our high point, which I don't remember what year this was, but at our high point, we had like, I want to say $80 million of revenue.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so the it was a pretty metric driven company, and there was a lot of like sharing at the company level, and then a lot of discussion of analytics in meetings and things like that. I was less involved in my video marketing role and that kind of stuff, but it was in company meetings we would talk about it a lot.
So, I mean, to me, that 80 million number seems pretty good. Did it feel like, oh, the company is growing and it's becoming, and were more people being brought in? Did it feel like, oh, this is a really great place to be?
Yes, and that actually a while ago you asked me if in those first 2 weeks any of those concerns I thought about were enough to make me feel queasy about the job. One of the things that made me feel really good about it was that, like, even from day one, revenue was growing, the amount of users was growing, people were being hired, and unlike most startups, a lot of like this company did take on investment, but it was bootstrapped for a number of years, and because of its ability, because it sold one of its products right before I joined, it had a lot of its own cash. So a lot of the growth was legitimate, like real customers paying money for a thing, which made us feel like we had a lot of real momentum, which was awesome.
Got it. Now, there's a couple of concerns you mentioned before, from the first 2 weeks about kind of the dark arts of marketing a people search
Yeah.
and, the product with no vision. As the video marketer, did you then become more involved with those products and did anything there give you pause?
The people search one, a little bit less. A lot of the information there was either like little helpful, like little videos, like tutorials on how to use the software, or
How to see if your wife's cheating on you?
no, never had to do anything like that. I never had to make a video that I like disagreed with either because it was like using some sleazy marketing tactic or some dark pattern for sure. Everything that I worked on, I definitely felt was honest. Never, actually shipped a video for the product with no vision because we never had. We could never like sit down and write a 2-minute script about what the product did because we didn't know what the product was going to do. We tried, but it just didn't work because it didn't have an end goal in sight for years.
And that product was never released, or it was released but without a vision of what it was doing.
It was like live and on the internet, but it never really had users until at the end of its life, its brand was transferred to another product. So you could say that it went live and had customers then, but that product was very different from any of the original iterations of the product.
So how much effort did the company sort of, use to sort of spin trying to figure out this new product out?
I'd say a lot of effort. I would say that maybe at any given time, like 10 to 15% of headcount was dedicated towards it. And certainly a lot of time was spent talking about it and discussing it in company meetings. Just like a lot of company attention from the founders. It always felt like something that was in R&D, but it wasn't like a side project. It was treated equally to all the other products in the company in terms of importance.
And you sort of identified from a very early point at your time there that you didn't see sort of the vision behind it, and that some of your colleagues, sort of other people who were on board at the same time, felt the same way. But how did the founders convey it, or the leadership? Do they really believe in it?
Yes, they definitely were visionary leaders. I really like the co-founders. Really good people, very smart, and have had a lot of success in many areas of their life, not just in this company. So this product in particular, they were very visionary, but the visions were vague, and sprawling and filled with non sequiturs and lacked like a concrete implementation behind them. Like they would, so this product was, and the original pitch when I first joined went something like this. People are on the internet. They have lots of different online accounts, Facebook, email accounts, social media accounts, etc. And they don't feel in control of their data. Facebook, tracks you and markets to you and has all this information about you, but you have no say over what they do, right? So like they start off with like a real problem, but then the pitch would start to meander and waver, and they would end up with kind of this vague idea of a product that would combine all of your online accounts, social media or otherwise, give you information about those online accounts, right? Like how many followers you might have, but then also give you, and this was like the really abstract phrase that got repeated over and over again, control over your own data. And they would never say explicitly that this product would let you, for instance, stop Facebook from tracking you. And I don't think anyone ever believed that that was possible. And yet it was still like mixed in with the pitch over and over again that by combining all of your online accounts in one place, you would have control over your online data and your online identity.
Right.
And it's really hard for me to convey why that vision was enticing. But even though part of you knew that the project itself wasn't anywhere close to solving the problem that was being talked about, it was still pretty inspiring, and a lot of people wanted to work on the problem.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even just, you saying that like it didn't really have a product behind it, I do find that statement of be in control of your data that's out there sounds very compelling. That, we all know that companies are tracking us on doing different things, and sort of think, oh, I can take back some of that control. That sounds appealing. But as you mentioned, there's no real way to do that. And so that seems to be where the problem lies.
One of the founders once said to me, one of the founders is friends with somebody who writes a lot of self-help books. It's like a professional in the industry. And this professional said that if you can write a self-help book, the real key to a self-help book is to, in the introduction, nail the problem. Because if you can convince your reader that you know and understand their problem, they will implicitly believe that you have a solution for them. And I saw that pattern like repeated again and again with this product, where they would nail a problem, but they wouldn't have an actual technical solution to solve it.
Now, so as the company is spending more time on this problem, is that giving you concern about the well-being of the company?
Yeah, and it certainly, people would talk behind closed doors about the product, and they would be concerned. So it was disturbing kind of the peace and harmony of the culture a lot. And concerns that me or other people would have would be that, oh, yeah, we're spending a lot of money on this. It's not going to succeed. A lot of our leadership team is working on it, but their time could be better used elsewhere. We knew the people that were on the team, right? Like it's a small company. I was friends with a lot of them, and it was stressing them out too. And that's never fun. So the whole thing, yeah, it was it was definitely a drain on the company, for sure.
And but eventually they did make this decision to sort of to move that branding to an existing product.
Yes. So again, our company, the company sold background checks for employment purposes, but there's also a lot of use cases for background checks for things like the gig economy, um, like Uber, Airbnb, etc. It's places where you need to like quickly do background checks on thousands of people automatically. And so we built an API and moved brand to that API. And so you could say it like launched successfully, and it did have customers, and probably still has customers to this day because this company is still running. But it was not the original intention of the brand or an intention of the product at all.
And so before we started recording, you'd mentioned that you then moved from videography into another role. What was the sort of what were you doing sort of at the end of your time at Gooseo?
So I moved into another role because the company had layoffs. We can talk about why there were layoffs later if you want. But when the company had layoffs, I lost everybody on my team that worked on the, the video production, and the company became much more focused again on doing things that made money
Hmm.
than it was like a few days prior. And the marketing team was also drastically reduced in size. I want to say like less than half of the original people. Or, like we lost more than half our people, maybe even 2/3. So it was clear that everybody was going to have to become more of a generalist and less of a specialist. And so I still did a little bit of video work, but I was interested in and kind of had to pick up other skills as well. So that included social media marketing, included like various things on our website, like just our product website, adding blog posts or adding new product pages, working with designers to put that kind of stuff up, that sort of thing.
And so maybe let's go to the layoff. So there have been times of good revenue, but there's this sort of lack of focus on this newer product. What was it that caused the company to have layoffs?
The layoffs came as a very conscious choice by the company, and this was interesting to me because the layoffs were emotionally a really big deal, a much bigger deal than I ever expected layoffs to be. And they were the direct result of the company doing the right thing like 6 months earlier. But 6 months earlier, none of us really realized what the cost was going to be for doing it. So, to speak more specifically, the people search business was our cash cow. Like, Tom was not making any money. The other company, the background check company for employers, was making some money, but nothing near what people search was doing. But like I said, the industry was kind of sketchy, and we had some of those dark patterns on our website, like the free trial thing that I mentioned. And the dark patterns were the kind of thing that people again talked about behind closed doors and no one was really happy with. But I think for very practical reasons, which we'll get to in a second, nobody wanted to remove it because it was really important for us to make money. But
Right.
I think we reached a boiling point where the company was starting to get more public attention, and we wanted things like the background check company and to get more publicity. And in general, we kind of just felt like it was time to take the high road here and stop using these dark patterns. So they released a new version of the People Search site, like completely redesigned, and it was great and worked like a consumer would want their People Search website to work. But that immediately drastically cut down on the amount of money we started making because our competitors continued to use their marketing practices and dark patterns. And like you could see the revenue chart predictably decline every month that we would talk about it. It would decline like a step ladder because everybody's year-long membership would expire and they would realize that they don't want to renew, and they would cancel their subscription. And so you could basically calculate like by whose subscriptions were expiring when, just how much money that we were going to lose month after month, right?
And you had
Um,
stopped doing the free trial, the bait and switch to the free trial. So in the past, you might have had this
right.
churn, but you weren't getting the new people that you were getting in the past.
Exactly. So we had the churn. Sorry, that's a good point. We had the churn, but we didn't have any new people. You could still certainly buy a subscription, but it was much clearer that you were buying a subscription than it was before. And the hope was that the background check companies' revenue would replace the people search revenue because it was growing, or like the background check revenue was growing, but it didn't grow in time. And after 6 months, they had to have pretty big layoffs across the company.
And so, I think that that all makes perfect sense. And was that made sort of clear to the entire company sort of throughout this process? Like, oh, we're gonna sort of, we're eliminating the bait and switch of the free trial, and we know that's going to cost us revenue, but we think that these other things are going to offset that. Or did that sort of come out in leaks as over that 6 month period?
No, they were really transparent about that. I don't think anyone ever got up in front of the entire company and said the words like dark pattern or
Right.
free trial. I think it was something that people were uncomfortable talking about, but we all knew what they were talking about, and they said we're going to lose money. We're going to release a new branded version of the site that's more consumer friendly than our competitors, and it's gonna cost us. So they were very clear about that up front. No one ever said we're going to need layoffs in 6 months if we don't grow our background check company fast enough. But you could do the math and kind of figure out that that could be possible. But wishful thinking probably meant that most people weren't thinking that at the
Right.
time.
So at like how long before the layoffs did people start to wonder, oh, are there going to be layoffs?
People did start seeing the writing on the wall like a month ahead of time. Uh, Layoffs happened in March of, I don't know, 2016 maybe. Um, and then by like February, there were like some rumors, but they did a really good job doing the layoffs. As terrible as they were, they did them quickly. Uh, they told they basically we had 2 floors in our office. They moved, the people who were staying to one floor and the people that were leaving to a different floor, and the founders talked to the people who were leaving for about an hour all at once, and then those people were allowed to stay for the rest of the day, and nobody worked that day. Like they did a pretty good job of executing the layoffs, I would say. But of course, like really stung because we were a younger company where you worked with a lot of your friends, and we were kind of like a family.
And before the layoffs were announced, and there started to be people thinking that that might happen. What did you think about your own chances of surviving it?
So I had, through like the rumor mill, learned that there was going to be layoffs like a week or two before they happened. Um, and one of the founders, talked to me the night before to say that the 2 people that were on my team were going to get laid off, but I was not going to be laid off. But it was like personally a interesting moment of introspection for me because I remember thinking at the time that if I had gotten laid off, it financially would have been a problem, but career wise, it was not as big a deal because I still wasn't happy doing the role I was going to do. And I won't get into it too much, but I'm a very happy developer now these days. And that was one of the turning points where I realized that I wasn't doing the kind of work that I wanted to do, and I really needed to get moving and switch to the career that I liked much better.
Cool. So it sort of made you think of like, okay, I've survived this, and that's great because I'm enjoying getting a paycheck. But at the same time, like it's sort of almost like it provoked you to then sort of think about what you really want to do long term.
Right, exactly. Like I realized that if I had gotten laid off, it wouldn't have been a huge blow to my career because I probably would have tried something else out anyways. So why not try something else out right now?
But you did survive, and so then you have this sort of more now in marketing kind of jack of all trades. And how did you enjoy that new role?
I did enjoy it. I did enjoy working. The morale at the company was hurt. It took us a few months to really recover from the layoffs, but I enjoyed working at a scrappy startup again, where a lot of priorities were set based on external constraints instead of having a lot of extra cash and imagination. And the generalist role itself was interesting to me. I ended up doing more front end development because I worked on the website. It was on HubSpot, but like we wanted to do certain things that HubSpot didn't allow, and that led to my enjoyment of programming and where I am today. So I did enjoy the generalist role because I was able to find some things that really clicked with me.
Now, when you first joined, you mentioned sort of that there were a lot of perks, the sailing, uh, the sailing perk. Did those go away after the layoffs, or were there still good perks of the company?
They kept them, and we also had like free lunch, for example, and a lot of snacks. They kept them. We did not have a company trip, but the founders were really cool about that. They admitted that we're probably all feeling guilty that we're still having free lunch when our friends don't have jobs, but they also showed us the financials of the lunch and the perks and said that it would not make a meaningful difference to cut these perks, and they felt like they were important for the company, so they kept them, except for the like yearly company trip where we would go out and party because that just felt like the wrong thing to do.
Prior to the layoffs, where were the different company trips to?
Went to Vegas, Pismo Beach, Yosemite. Oh, those were the big ones. Those were the big ones.
Fun things, but nothing so extravagant. I mean, you're still within, an hour plane ride of the Bay Area.
Right. Yeah, they weren't, and these were like, these weren't. People were acting responsibly during these parties. They were just really fun because we were on vacation together. They would happen over a weekend, but you have to pay for hotel flights. They're expensive.
All right, so I know that you're sort of in the last year of your time there in this kind of marketing role where you're starting to realize you like front end development. When did you start to think about leaving the company?
I was stuck for a long time between leaving to become a developer or leaving to do something else, and wasn't sure what that something else was. I think this is a common thing for people in their mid 20s to be in a job that is comfortable, good paying. They probably even like the company and the people they work with, but the role is something that they just can't see themselves doing for the next 40 years. And they get stuck because they don't know what they want to do. So they stay at that company and they keep thinking about what they want to do and thinking about what they want to do. So I was in that situation. Um, but one day someone just said the right thing to me, and I realized that I was wasting my time and I needed to switch and become a developer. I was hanging out with my friend who was another developer, and I was complaining about this problem, about how I was stuck and how I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And he just put it in really simple terms. He said, "How about you just apply to a coding boot camp, and you'll probably get in based on the experience that you have already, and then see how you feel, and see if that feels like a good fit for you. Like, don't think in the abstract about what you want to do. Actually apply to a concrete, real life program, talk to people there, and then if it feels like a fun thing to do, just jump in and do it." And so that was enough to tip me over the edge and make the decision. And I applied and I got in, and I still worked for a few more months to save up money before I gave my notice.
For the boot camp, was that where you had to be full time, so you had to leave Goose.io to do it, or was it like at night?
Oh, it was full time. Yeah. Uh, it was like probably 80-hour weeks.
Wow. When you just you got the acceptance, and eventually you told your manager that you were going to do this, did they try and convince you to stay?
No, they didn't try to convince me to stay. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of people leaving at the time, and I think they kind of knew that I was going to give them this news, and they kind of knew that I wasn't enjoying my role. I hadn't found what I wanted to do. Basically, I was somewhat close with the founders. Like, we would talk about some of this stuff openly. The company really liked walking meetings and one-on-ones, so you spend a lot of time talking to people about your own careers and aspirations. And so they had kind of known indirectly that I wasn't happy with like marketing in general as a career path. So when I told them, I don't think it was a huge surprise. And yeah, they let me go.
Even before, I guess, when you're first starting to, you're saying that you're not happy with your role, did they try and find other roles for you, even before you'd applied to the boot camp? Did they try and find a way to get you happy while staying at Goose.io?
Well, I think my like role changes before that were kind of a result of that. Again, our conversations were pretty indirect. Like, I didn't
Hmm.
say to them literally, I am unhappy with my role and I would like something else. But it's like a very California way of speaking. Instead, we would like hint and haw around it. And that's how I kind of went from HR to video production to marketing. Um, and at one brief point, I almost did switch to front end development. And I wonder what would have happened if I had done that a year or two earlier. But I decided not to at the time.
Why did you decide not to at that time?
That was, I basically had a choice between video production or front end development. That was a year into the company.
Okay.
But the founder had said that, you know, video production is like video marketing is a like new growing area. He saw a lot of potential there, and I was really excited about that for those reasons. Whereas a front end developer had talked to me and said, "Hey, I'd really like you on my team," um, but he only said it once and it didn't come with as strong of a sales pitch as the founder giving it to you. And I was really on board with that vision, so I went for that.
Right. And I mean, I'm also guessing that, this was kind of, in many ways, the opportunity to become a video marketer it doesn't come along very often, where becoming a front end dev, it's an easier job to get.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's true, and I also think it was partly an identity thing. Like, I saw myself more as the kind of person I went to a business school, right? I saw myself more as the kind of person who would work in marketing or as a video producer, not as someone who's a developer.
So a couple last questions before we wrap things up. Were you earning equity sort of throughout your time there?
Yes, I had options, and you got more options as time went on.
And so when you left, did you choose to exercise them or not?
I did not. They had very generous terms. You could exercise within 2 years, so I kept tabs on the company, but I ended up not exercising them after 2 years, which I did think about a little bit because, again, they're still in business, but I decided to take the financially safe route.
And so I think to wrap up with our last question, Nate, um, let's say we had a time machine before you walk into that career fair, and you go back in time and you see yourself. Do you tell yourself to still take the role at Goose.io, or do you say, hey, maybe go try something else?
Oh, the counterfactual question. I think I would definitely do it again. I think the company taught me a lot about success and failure. I don't view the company's trajectory in general as a failure. They certainly made money for their investors. The people who worked there learned a lot and had a really good time, and the culture was a very kind, family oriented culture. And I had a lot of life experiences that made me who I am today. So I would not have traded it for anything. I definitely got my Silicon Valley experience, and that's what I was looking for. I didn't join the next Facebook, but I don't know. I still wouldn't trade it for anything, I think.
Excellent. Nate, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks, Steven. Thanks, Jake.
Dark patterns. Save your soul or save your company. Jake, which would have you chosen?
I'd like to believe that I'd do the right thing, but a couple things come across my mind. It's number one, what really is the right thing? Because they decide to save their soul instead of saving the company, but that means that led to layoffs. And if you're the founder of a company and you're leading to your employees getting laid off, is that the right thing to do? And then the other issue is, let's say they stopped and they did stop running ads about finding out if your spouse is cheating on you. It doesn't mean the competitors stopped. They kept doing it, and so that evil still exists out there in the world.
I was going to say, I think that's probably the hardest thing is that no matter what good actor Goose.io was by changing their ways, people were still out there. The competitors still doing the dark patterns, still convincing people they need to buy their product year in and year out. And they're just going to do the wrong thing, and there's not going to be a penalty for them. The only one who gets hurt is the employees at Goose.io at the end of the day. But of course, that doesn't feel good either way, because if you're showing up, eating that free lunch, going sailing all the time, and knowing that you're affording all these great benefits because of your kind of manipulating people's buying patterns, it wouldn't sit well with me. And I don't think I'd quit outright because I'd probably love the gig and all the benefits and stuff. But I think I'd probably want to start looking at something else pretty quickly.
Once you had your third sailing trip.
Once I had my third sailing ship for the year, I think that's a fine cutoff moment.
Yeah, it's really tricky because, with every job you probably have, there's always a little bit of manipulation when, in any capitalist society, you at a grocery store, they put gum right by the checkout, so you just grab it without thinking about it. Is that a dark pattern? Like, where is that line of what is ethical and what is unethical?
Yeah, one grocery store just needs to take it away for now, and just so we can see what their layoffs look like due to that decision, and then I think there's an accurate discussion to be had there.
Well, once they did finally shift away from the dark patterns, they fell into another trap that we've seen a few times. That they did a great job of recognizing a pain point, but didn't have a real way to solve it. This idea of take control of your online data.
Yeah, and when you hear that phrase, it sounds like such a great problem. It sounds like such a great value proposition. Like you're not going to say that to someone in today's age, and someone's going to be like, "No, I don't want a product that lets me take control of my online data." And that's part of the problem is the issue they were trying to solve is so broad. Different people can hear that, and it means different things. I'm like, oh, is it just social media data? Is it like credit card data? What am I taking control of? And everyone can get really excited about it, but it doesn't mean that there's going to be a solution for it. Like, did Goose.io even have the resources to like take control of the data? Is the data all held by other companies at the end of the day that you have very little ability to execute a solution that would actually solve the problem?
Right? It just sounds like something that you can spin your wheels on for years and years, and all your board's probably like, "Wow, this sounds great. These guys are gonna be the next big thing." But yeah, what does it really mean, and how could you actually um, deliver a tangible product that people would pay money for that could at least solve part of this problem?
And I think that's probably the big challenge is the founders knew they needed something cool, the leadership team knew they needed something cool, but they didn't know what it was, but they liked this problem and they felt like that was the next step. But just because you have a problem or a very broad problem doesn't mean it's going to be the future of the company or means you can even execute on it. It's very hard to take this very broad problem, actually refine it to a point that's something you can act upon, but still keep the level of excitement and engagement on that from the board level. Because if it was very minute, take control of this one piece of data in your life, it's no longer as broad or probably has the TAM to back it up for the board to be excited.
And then next thing you know, you're in the SaaS graveyard.
Exactly. Well, that wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for the near future for episode 10.